The Pacers have a message sent to them by Rick Carlisle Friday night in Charlotte and respond in a big way on Saturday against the Pelicans. They're playing through Sabonis on Saturday. They played with pace. Why couldn't they have just done that all the time? Lots to get to, including a Pacers Bulls preview on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers, as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News, and today I don't know what tone to use when talking about the Indiana Pacers because they sucked last week and they got embarrassed on Friday in Charlotte, and Rick Carlisle pulls the starters and sends a message, and then the Pacers responded exactly how you'd want a team to respond to said message if you're a fan of the team. So good response, bad that the message had to be sent. Lots to talk about with this team, and they've got a really tough opponent in Chicago tonight. And joining me to talk about the Pacers, what they're doing, the Chicago Bulls, a man who writes for so many websites, I need like Yankee sax to play while they all scroll across the screen so people can see them all. Mr. Jackson Frank himself. Jackson, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm excellent. I don't know what I am in such a good mood for this Sunday, but I am doing excellent. And I am excited to talk about this Pacers team. Jackson tweeted something to this effect on Friday, and he was absolutely correct. The way the Pacers are using Domantas Sabonis is not to his strengths. And that is exactly where this podcast should be started, because Sabonis' touch numbers and the way he was getting the ball and the way he was being used this last week were different-ish from the Sabonis we've seen in the past. Against the Knicks, it was pretty good for a lot of the game, and then they went away from him. Then he shot 7 times against Detroit, and then 6 times against Charlotte. They weren't giving him the ball in the high post. They weren't playing through him in the deep post, and they looked useless. And then he got the ball out against the Pelicans, and they kicked some ass. So, Jackson, you watched the Hornets game in full. I don't know how much of the Pelicans-Pacers game you watched, but what were you seeing from Sabonis that looked so off from what he's so good at? And by the way, everybody, Jackson used to cover Gonzaga, so he has more Sabonis knowledge than most people do.
He was right before my time. Actually, we never crossed paths. He had his breakout year when I was a senior in high school. But yeah, in that Hornets game, he was either pick and popping or he was standing in the corners for plays. I remember there was one specific play. I think it was in the second half. The Pacers ran a side ball screen for Miles Turner. The Hornets switched like they usually do, and Turner were trying to post up, and Sabonis was in the weak corner. I think Plumlee came over because he was just ignoring Sabonis because he's not a very good shooter. And even if he is, you're willing to give him those threes. And Plumlee just absolutely erased Turner at the rim, and it felt all backwards in that play specifically. Like, you want Turner spacing, you want Sabonis in the post, especially against a switch-heavy, undersized, interior team like the Hornets. And so, just not enough of attacking. In general, not enough attacking inside, but also especially against a small team like the Hornets, it felt like a great. And then the first game of the year, Sabonis had 20 points in the first 14 minutes or something ridiculous. So it was a clear blueprint for that game, especially with that opponent. And so it was just weird to see him so often, just on the perimeter being used as a spacer when he's not really a spacer. It's one thing, a guy like Miles Turner maybe isn't a great spacer, but he can knock down open shots when they come to him or open threes. Sabonis isn't really either of those this year, and so it's just really weird to see him utilized in that way when there's been easy ways and examples of success, attacking the interior with him.
Yeah, if he can be used as a threat away from the ball, I think, but not like that. Not in the weak corner, because he's shooting horribly this year. Like, you see 30%, and it looks awesome, but it's like I think he had 2 games where he made it. He was 4 for 6 on opening night, and 2 for 3 against Philly, and 3 for 4 against New York. And the rest of the games are all substandard 3-point games, so he's really inflated by 3 games. He's not a good shooter. I don't know why they would stick him in the corner like that. He's threatening from the elbows and kind of dunker spot creation areas where he can, like, hey, I'm huge. If you don't come cover me, I will just back up and score or hand it off to someone. And they weren't really doing that last week, and some of it was, Rick Carlisle loves anyone on the court can shoot from wherever if they think they're open, and they have all these interchangeable roles, which is good at times. It can really throw off a defense, but when it's so rigid like they were playing against Charlotte, like everyone was so I can't explain it. Like, well, I can. I'll talk about it later. They played more free against the Pelicans per their own words, but they were just so like robotic. You know, they were like, okay, we got to get it to this guy so that we can do this thing. And Carlisle was kind of calling a lot of plays, and that didn't work. And Sabonis wasn't in the advantageous positions. I don't know why I just said advantageous like that. And it didn't work at all. They come out Saturday, and he's pushing in transition more. And sometimes that can be a turnover fest for him. He only had 2 against the Pelicans, so it worked out. But he was pushing well in transition. As a trailer he was creating, they got him the ball at the elbow. And something he's done way less this year that he really succeeded in with Nate McMillan and Nate Bjorkgren was handoffs, right? He still does some of them, but like he's the best screener in the NBA or in the top, whatever, 3-5 guys at that. Like that's where his best thing is if you have him on the perimeter is right around the ball, making an advantage for the Pacers with a screen. So getting back to that just made too much sense. And I was surprised how much last week they were just not having him be close to the ball or involved in plays like that.
Yeah, and I think, if you're going to tie it to the other big man there, Miles Turner, he's someone, like you look at that game against the Hornets, he had 3 shots, maybe 4 shots. And that's because he's someone who was creation dependent, right? Someone else has to create an advantage, and Sabonis is the team's best avenue to do so. And if he's not being deployed in the proper way, then Miles Turner doesn't get to shoot threes, doesn't get to attack off the dribble like we've seen him do the last couple of years in greater frequency. So all of it, there's a ripple effect, right? It's not just like Sabonis needs to get his touches so he can produce. He needs to get his touches so the offense can do things better. And I think their numbers in general against the Hornets ended up being okay offensively. Jeremy Lamb got hot.
Brad Wanamaker got hot.
Brad, and all that. But yeah, when the starters are the normal rotation guys, I guess the starters, because some of those other guys helped fuel the runner rotation guys. But when the starters were in, the offense wasn't very good because the guys weren't being used properly. And there's a lot of Malcolm Brogdon's shoulders, and he's been awesome in a lot of ways this year. But you're leaving things on the table when you station Sabonis in the corners, and you don't really get Miles Turner his ability to shoot threes and attack off the catch. So there's a ripple effect there, like I said. And so I wasn't able to catch any of Saturday's game, but it's encouraging to hear that at least for one night things were back to the way that Sabonis should be used, because the Pacers can be pretty good this year, but it's going to be reliant on Sabonis being Sabonis and how that affects the rest of the offense.
Jackson, are you ready for some lazy, reductive analysis using numbers? Because boy, do I have some for you. Sabonis has 5 or more assists 7 times this season, okay? In those games, +6 against the Wizards, +15 against the Spurs, +19 against the Pelicans on Saturday, +1 in a loss against Milwaukee, +10 against the Jazz, +5 against the Sixers, and 1 stinker against the Nets, right? Yes, reductive. It's only 7 games, small sample size galore. Maybe I'm losing the forest in the trees here, but it seems like getting him involved and setting him up in situations where he can create for his teammates helps the Pacers outscore the other team when he's in the game. Maybe it's not that easy, but it just when they're having him not be a creator for others and they're having him be just screen roll, stand in the corner, interchange roles with Miles kind of guy, he's not as effective. And I think that kind of sells it the most to me, because he is a good passer, but he's not like, I think assists are an overrated metric for him because a lot of his assists are just handoffs or just tossing over his shoulder or something. But I think that number there shows that when he's involved, at least in a way where he's around the ball, like I just said, it leads to success for this team.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know maybe like in those games what his touches were. We talked there's been a lot of talk about his touches being down so much. He was first or second in the league last year in touches behind Jokic or something. And so I'd be curious I think that, the assists, I don't disagree. I think there's definitely some correlation there, but I think an even stronger, correlation would be or indicator would be the touches, because that's how he did his best. Yes, ideally in supercharged offense, Sabonis is more of a complementary player, but the Pacers aren't a supercharged offense. There's no Luka Doncic walking through that door for Rick Carlisle. So Sabonis is your best offensive player. Maybe prefer Malcolm Brogdon, but regardless, he's one of your most important, arguably your most important, and so you got to use him properly. And as you mentioned, there's examples of it working, and I think especially this year, we're in such an interesting space in the NBA, and that there's not really one style. For a while, everyone tried to do the small ball, and then maybe there's a little bit of tall ball, recoil. But there's a lot of teams that play small. The Hornets play small. I'm sure there's a few others that I'm missing. I'm just using the Hornets because that's a team in question right now. But I think especially for Sabonis, that's someone who can just destroy all these teams that are going small. And so you got to get him the ball in the interior because he has great footwork and he's patient and he he will pivot 7 times and finally score with an up fake and step through. So definitely given the NBA climate currently and how there's just so many different styles and a lot of them are going small. I think that helps the Pacers, and it's something that get the ball to Sabonis more inside.
The poor Pelicans, who are supposed to try to be big when Zion is playing, are using Brandon Ingram and Josh Hartline at the 4 right now. So they are currently in the small group to me. Sabonis killed them, but they had nothing for him. So that's another example of a team like that. But yeah, like the Cavs are showing the huge wave can come in and be successful again this year with super funk vibes from the Cavs. I cannot wait to watch the Pacers play the Cavs this year. And you live in Portland. You didn't even bring up the Blazers. I thought they were another small team that actually kind of beat the Pacers with small size. Robert Covington at the 4 was a big change for them.
And they've gone with Larry Nance recently at the 5 the last few games, closing games. The Pistons are pretty small as well. I think the narrative like small ball sweeping over the NBA is definitely not the case, but there are definitely a lot of teams that are playing small this year. So that should work out that should benefit the Pacers offense, but it's contingent on Sabonis being used properly, not just being used.
Hey guys, quick little break so I can tell you about 2 awesome groups of people. First up, the good folks over at PrizePicks, who are making daily fantasy made easy. They have the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. They offer more props than any other DFS prop operator and offer all the superstar players as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game. Any prop you can think of, yardage, touchdowns, interceptions thrown, they got it on there. All users that deposit and use this promo code will receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Just use this code NBA. When you sign up, you can do mixed sport entries. They have an award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate, check it out. Check it out, prizepicks.com today. Use the promo code NBA or go to your App Store, download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Let's also talk about Direct TV, because if you're like me, this sounds familiar. One device to watch the game live, another to stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone or iPad, and you've got your neighbors/parents log in for the good stuff. Well, I got to tell you about a better way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle and finally get your TV together. It's called Direct TV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. Get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together. With DirecTV Stream, you can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Jackson, I don't want to speak for you, but I think you're like me enough that you don't love talking about narratives. But this Pacers weekend kind of makes you talk about it, because when you do what Rick Carlisle did on Friday, a narrative is going to be formed, right? The Pacers had a long week of, they had many problems. We just discussed a few of them with usage of players and Karis LeVert talking about how they're not in rhythm a lot last week and stuff. But also, even per the players' admission, the effort wasn't always there. And on Friday, the Hornets started the third quarter, smoked them on the effort game. And Rick Carlisle said, screw this. All these normal rotation guys are done. He played the full bench basically the whole second half. And it helped him that group looked awesome and he didn't even need to pull them. They almost tied that game somehow. But he sent a message. And the next day, Miles Turner said, yeah, it wasn't a good 24 hours, but, we kind of needed that. And then Sabonis said, yeah, it sucked, but it let us play more free. And Carlisle said that, he wanted them to play more free. And there is a narrative to this of, one, it made them kind of realize, like, wow, we need to kick it in gear and play our way a little more. And two, it made them realize they need to play more free. So we'll kind of dissect those points 1, 2. Do you feel like sending a message usually works pretty well? And I think in this case, Jackson, there's a little bit of luck on the Pacers side that it was a back-to-back, because they didn't have time to like sulk on it or think about it or have to have a team meeting. It was just like, all right, we're flying back. We're playing the Hornets the next day, the Pelicans the next day, New Orleans. You can forget those team names. Just forget about it. Just forget about it and play the next day. That doesn't happen very often in the NBA. It's like per each franchise, probably once every 3 seasons. Do you feel like it's a thing that's usually this successful?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't love the move in the moment. Not playing. I think I don't know if the Pacers would have won that game if they would have gone back to their starters. But obviously it helped as we mentioned that Jeremy Lamb and Brad Wanamaker caught fire, and maybe Rick Carlisle deserves some credit for rolling with those guys in that sense. But I didn't love it in the moment. But obviously something changed. But also, as we mentioned, like Carlisle changed his approach, right? Like it wasn't just the players figuring it out on their own. It was that Carlisle constructed a game plan that was better tailored to his players' strengths, which is important too. So I don't know. I have to have to go back and think about all the times that players or coaches have done something like that. Not to that degree. I mean, sitting your starter for 20 straight minutes is a very loud and clear message that doesn't happen very often in my recollection. So I didn't love it at the moment, but obviously something worked. But at the same time, it was a symbiotic thing, right? It wasn't just that like they went out and played the same way Carlisle wanted to, and Carlisle adjusted. So I guess kudos to them. But again, I didn't love it at the moment. But Carlisle knows vastly more basketball than I do, which I tweeted about. But I wasn't a fan. But something worked, and so hopefully Carlisle, like the players, that resonates with them. But Carlisle also realizes, okay, we get Sabonis in the right spots, we're going to look better. And it obviously helps that the Pelicans are down on their luck in many ways right now, given the injuries and all that.
Yeah, so Carlisle said after the Hornets game, he was like, this is on me. Like, I did not have these guys prepared to play. And look, you watch the game, like that's maybe that's a little true, but that's a lot of coach speak. Like, they sucked. Like, they weren't trying that hard, and their system was kind of weird. So maybe some mental and tactical preparations fell a little short, but like there was a lot of effort gaps from players that you're like, I appreciate you falling on the sword as the coach, but I don't know if I buy that. And so you kind of look and go, well, that's weird that he said that. But then he backed up his talk the next day by being a different coach against the Pelicans and saying, play more free, play your game. I'm going to be more hands-off. Sabonis said some of it was like, he was calling a lot of plays on this stretch they had, Knicks, Pistons, Hornets. He was calling more plays in the game than he usually has against the Pelicans. He said, no, I'm not going to do that as much. And they kicked some butt. And you're right, the Pelicans are what they are. They're pretty bad. So maybe that's just a lucky timing of game after a message sent kind of performance. But it's a weird thing where I disagree with him when he says it, and then he does something about it, and it works, and all the players respond to it really well. So, yeah, like you said, Carlisle knows better than we do, right? We're talking on a podcast for a reason.
So that's the thing is it'd be one thing, right, if they just played the same way they did a day prior and they beat a team that was down Devontae Graham and Zion Williamson, and I think maybe some other guys are out. It's just not a great roster behind their superstar and whatnot. Actually, I think it's an okay roster, but when you don't have a top 20 player, you're going to be struggling. But anyhow, like it'd be one thing if they just beat a bad team and played the same way, but they play differently and beat a bad team comfortably. Like you would hope that when the Pacers play Monday against the Bulls, that they continue to do that, especially because it looks like I don't want to get ahead of it. But like I don't know about Vucevic's status, which means the Bulls will be playing small a lot. So there's another team, right, that the Bulls are playing small significantly or without Vuce a ton. And even when Vuce is off the floor when he's healthy, they're small. So another chance to continue to exploit a team that is a rotation that is small in the interior. So you have to play that way again, right? You can't just revert back. You have to learn from it. So there's definitely some luck involved with it, but it's just so interesting to say, it's all on me, but the coach is something different, and then it looks different. So you got to sustain that, especially because it's a great opportunity to do that against Bulls opponent. You're not playing a tall ball team on Monday, so they should have a good opportunity to replicate what they did in some ways. Obviously, the Bulls are much better than the Pelicans, but a good opportunity to keep playing that way.
Jackson, I've just learned that Luke Walton has been fired by the Kings, unsurprisingly. So everyone, here's my live reaction to that. I'm not surprised at all. Moving on. Something else interesting that's happened, and I just kind of mentioned it with Sabonis, is pace. The pace of the Pacers, man, that's a mouthful, has been weird this season. Like, sometimes it's been their biggest successor. Like Carlisle said against the Kings, who play really fast. Ironic that I just brought up Luke Walton. They tried to slow it down because the Kings play fast. They controlled that pace, they win. They tried to play fast against the Jazz. They controlled that pace, they win. And then this week they play a team in the Hornets who play so fast, and they tried to slow it down like against the Kings. Didn't work at all, right? Pistons, young team, they play a little fast, tried to slow it down, didn't work. Knicks, I get the slow pace thing. They were winning for most of that game before they blew it. Whatever, they lost 3 games in a row. Pace control has been a big thing for this team, and Carlisle talked about how after defensive rebounds, they were last in the league in time of possession, like the slowest possessions after defensive rebounds. And for a team that was really good in transition under Nate Bjorkgren last year, one of the few things Bjorkgren did that was really effective, I was surprised to see that was hear that was the case. I didn't know that stat. So what do you think of pace control and how much it impacts winning a game? And do you feel like that's something the Pacers can kind of lean towards, just playing a little faster? I talked about Sabonis emphasizing transition more per his own words. How much can that kind of turn them around as they go forward?
Yeah, that's interesting. I I really don't have a great answer. I think, you mentioned earlier that like Sabonis, was good, leading some breaks, against the Pelicans, but he's a guy who can be kind of hit or miss there, right? Like he can get sloppy, he can kind of dribble himself into precarious situations. Then you have a guy like Karis LeVert, who's can be pretty dynamic in transition with his speed and ball handling and passing vision there. But Malcolm Brogdon can do something, but he likes to dictate things and be a little slower and wind his way around the screen 12 seconds into the shot clock. So I like the idea of being malleable pace wise, but at the same time I think some sort of consistency can help a team too, right? It's tough to one game you're playing at the fourth highest pace in the league, the other you're down to 22nd. I think I get why you would do that based on matchups, but I think it can create some inconsistencies and just if you're starting possession 12 seconds into the clock, that changes maybe what action you can run versus 17 seconds into the clock, right? Or 7 seconds, excuse me. So I get it, but I would hope that there may be a little less variance. Like because if you're changing things based on the opponent, you're already like I get it, but you're kind of, I don't want to say playing into their hands, but you want to be the aggressor, right? You want to be the one that is, dictating things. So I think it's probably a little more worthwhile to find a pace that works for your key players and stick with it rather than changing game by game, even if there's been times it's effective for the Pacers.
I agree with a lot of that, and in basketball in general, you always want the other team to be reacting to you, not the other way around. So like, if the way you're controlling the pace makes the other team decide they need to change their normal pace, then it works. But if, like what happened this week against Detroit and Charlotte, they try to change the game pace and it doesn't work at all, then you fall flat on your face because now you're intentionally playing a little out of character and it's not working. So I agree with a lot of what you just said, and it's a weird thing to talk about pace because pace doesn't always mean good or bad. Like faster is not always better and slower is not always worse. So it's just finding the right pace for your team, and I think for the Pacers that their speed has been too slow during this rough week prior to stomping the Pelicans. So, hearing Carlisle talk about getting that focus right and playing more free, and sometimes it's that easy. You just tell guys, we're too rigid, play your game, and it helps. Again, they were playing the Pelicans and had the freedom to do that, but it really helped them. It turned their performance around. They look great on both ends, and they look good. One last break so I can tell you guys about the good folks over at Built Bar because I love Thanksgiving. I'm psyched that it's this week. Tons of good food and treats. They're everywhere. But maybe you want a yummy dessert that isn't so full of calories and sugar. That's where Built Bar comes in, the best tasting protein bar ever and the new holiday dessert. They are 100% covered in chocolate. Delicious, delicious protein bars. So many Locked On Pacers listeners have told me that they've tried them and they're hooked. One slice of pie, 300 calories at minimum, likely way more. Most Built Bars are only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, plenty of protein, and just as good. Coconut cream pie Built Bar instead of the actual pie. Raspberry Built Bar instead of raspberry pie. They're all delicious. You got to try them. Great option when you're hungry. They can be a meal replacement, a good snack. I've used them for both before. You can share them with your family at gatherings. Make everybody try them. They're delicious. They have new flavors coming out all month. They've got a Black Friday deal coming up this week, so get excited for that. And you can try them yourself. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. That is LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, tonight we have Pacers Bulls, and you just wrote about the Bulls. So this is perfect timing in their defense. And the Bulls' defense is fascinating. And I have to tell on myself because I screwed up with the Bulls. I thought their defense would suck because I only thought about their high-profile players where, like, Levine's notorious. His is more reputation than effect. He's a better defender than his rep, but not necessarily considered a great defender. Same with DeRozan. Vucevic is all right, but slow foot speed. You just think of the stars, but, like, they have Caruso and Patrick Williams, even though he's not playing, who are good defenders, and some other guys who are stepping in and playing very solid defense to them. And their defense was actually like 16th or 17th last year. Like not that bad, right? And they added Caruso to that. It's like, it was lazy for me. I was wrong. Both hands are up for you YouTube watchers. Both hands are up. I was wrong about the Bulls defense. And Jackson just wrote about it. So first of all, tell everyone why the small Bulls are having so much success on defense this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably was I was high on the Bulls, but a lot of it was because of the offense. Like I thought they would be okay on defense because Billy Donovan has a track record of, we were talking about like tailoring schemes to players. He has a track record of doing that. He's not necessarily the most innovative, but he plays a way that makes sense for his players. Across the two teams he's coached now in the NBA. Maybe I don't know. He's only been 2 teams? I know, like recently, but anyhow, Thunder and Bulls as of late, I will say. What they do is like every one of their players in the rotation maybe save, Levine this year, who I think has been okay, has been like a notably positive defender. DeRozan has notoriously been very poor in his career, but this year's actually been pretty impressive, especially he's active and help, and he has size and length, and so that you play attentively, you can make things happen at that size as a wing. So what they do is they're really, really aggressive. They're helping at the nail a ton. They're digging down on the post. The rotations are incredible. I don't think I've seen a team, maybe save for the Warriors, that make better rotations than they do this year. They'll double in the post, or they'll guy will drive and they'll help off and they'll quickly recover the shooter. Or maybe if a guy gets downhill, there's another rotation and they're helping the helper. So they're selling out a ton. They create a ton of turnovers. When I wrote that piece early last week, I think they were like 5th in turnover rate. I don't know if they're still quite there after a couple more games, but they're still doing that a ton. And then it fuels their offense. We didn't even mention Lonzo Ball. Lonzo's been awesome this year on defense in general. 2 areas that I thought he kind of struggled with throughout his career were like playing with physicality on defense and getting over screens, and he's been awesome in those regards. His defense against Julius Randle and their loss to the Knicks a few weeks ago was really key in kind of bringing them back to almost win that one. So super handsy, aggressive, switch a lot. They take risks, but they have backline help. They figure things out. And Vooch, for all of his limitations, is really sound positionally and uses his hands really well. Javonte Green's been awesome. Derrick Jones Jr. is creating a ton of havoc on defense with his length and ability to cover ground. So they'll have trouble against teams that have size and are really good passing teams. Obviously they were missing Vooch against the Warriors, but the Warriors are a great passing team, and they kind of picked that apart. They want you to. The Bulls want you to try and make that really tough skip pass through 4 defenders, or maybe like the Lucas of the world who can manipulate the tagger, and so a lot of teams aren't capable of that. But that's kind of how you can beat them. And the Bulls have some size in the interior, so I'm not saying they're going to totally, or the Patriots have some size. I'm not saying they're totally going to dominate the Bulls defense, but there's a little bit of exploitation there that most opponents don't have.
The best part of the article is your captions for the clips. Complimentary players doing stuff is my favorite clip of the article. Yeah. The Bull. It's like I look at the Bulls roster and I'm like, how is Javonte Green a positive defender all of a sudden? It's like, how did they do this? It's the Billy Donovan effect. He gets a lot out of these kind of guys, but they're getting a lot of that kind of stuff where guys that you didn't expect to play a ton for them. Javonte Green is playing 20 minutes a game. That's been really nice.
He's been awesome. He just plays super hard. He fights over screens. He's rangy. He gets out in transition. They just have all these athletes, and then they get stops. One of them forces a turnover, and then Lonzo and Levine are running the break, or DeRozan, and they're throwing lobs and leaking out for threes. And yeah, Javonte has been awesome. He didn't play a ton in Boston, but he's been so fun this year. It's been cool to see him really find a role. And they haven't really missed. It's obviously a bummer that Patrick Williams is out for a litany of reasons, but they haven't really missed him yet. Maybe they would be nice to have a little more size in the front court, but Derrick Jones Jr., Javonte Green have really been able to kind of fill his absence admirably.
And Io and Tony Bradley are giving them capable minutes. What? What? How? Tony Bradley was okay in his career sometimes, but it's just so surprising the way they've been getting a lot out of these guys. Somehow I didn't even mention Lonzo when talking about the guys they got that helped their defense too. I mean, they added a lot of guys. It was very lazy for me to assume their defense would be bad. And, I do think people were a little too low on their offense. You're right that when you have 4 guys who can create really good shots for themselves anytime, it's how do you guard that really well? So their defense has been surprising to me, but I was mostly just wrong. But they're 3rd in the East for a reason. They're really good. But I think Vooch, you nailed that, might be the biggest swing thing that makes I'd still favor the Bulls just to get ahead of this. But this game possible for the Pacers as a win is he's in COVID protocols. He has been since the 11th or the 10th. One of those 2 days. I don't remember how the reporting exactly works with that, but it's 10 days out for sure. That would be today for recording or yesterday for you listening. And so you cover the Sixers.
I think he's vaccinated, so I think he just needs 2 negative tests from whatever. I haven't heard anything yet, but I think if he got two negative tests in the span of 24 hours, he would be cleared to play.
I thought positive tests were always 10 days. I could be wrong about that. I don't actually know if he was positive.
It's murky. I don't know. It's trying to find all the the language and the protocols on that for vaccinated players has been, they didn't necessarily distinguish greatly among that part of, like, they distinguish well, what vaccinated versus unvaccinated players can do on road trips and all that, but it's been tougher. But from what I know, because Joel Embiid is, for the Sixers, is vaccinated, and he's been out he's been out like 2 weeks now, unfortunately, but it was for him just two negative tests in 24 hours. So Vooch, from what I've read report wise, is I think the entire Bulls team is vaccinated. So we would just need two negative tests, but point being is, the earliest he can come back is tomorrow, regardless of that, right?
Right.
So.
Well, I was going to bring up Embiid because when Philly was in Indy, Doc Rivers said something like, yeah, even right at 10 days, like, Joel can't play right away. He hasn't run for 10 days. He's been with the team. Like, it takes a second to get into that, back to that. I don't remember exactly how he phrased it. He might have even been talking about someone else, because the Sixers.
Well,
and
it's weird too, because Tobias Harris, is has been reported as vaccinated, and he contracted COVID, and he was only out 10 days on the dot. Like, I think the first game he missed was
Isaiah Joe too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So, like, that's the thing, is like those guys all missed 10. Both two guys missed 10 days on the dot, and at least, I don't know Isaiah Joe's stats vaccination wise, but Tobias is on. Like, it's been reported that he's vaccinated. He missed 10 days. So it's weird that, like, Doc was saying that about Joel, but not Tobias, who was also symptomatic, because Doc had talked earlier about, at one point, like, Tobias was really struggling with, going through with some symptoms. So I don't know. Doc is kind of notoriously interesting with media, but it was weird to hear that he was talking about that with Joel, whereas Tobias came back 10 days on the dot and then was awesome against the Pacers a couple of days later. So I don't know. It's a weird situation with Embiid, and that's how it always is, unfortunately, with and I wouldn't say unfortunately, just how it always is with Embiid and his absences. With the team is pretty hush hush on those things, but yeah. Somehow we're talking about the Sixers, and it's the Pacers.
You cover them. You can't. It's like when someone asks me about a Pacers question, I go way too long. It's just how it is. I have lots of information and thoughts on this stuff. For Vucevic, maybe he's back, maybe he's not. He hasn't played since the 11th. That I can say factually. Or since the 10th. Gosh, I was just wrong about something I said. Anyway, if he doesn't play, you just mentioned this earlier, the Pacers will have a size advantage somewhere. It might be Miles, it might be Domas, whatever the one center is. They even played Goga solo center on Saturday. There will be times when they have a big size advantage, even like Tony Bradley can't play the whole game, and Alize Johnson might be their backup center for a little bit, former Pacer. I just wanted to say his name mostly. But, they won't have
the five at times.
Yeah, they won't have the resources to really defend those guys. So if Vooch does play, they have better resources there, although Sabonis has done very well against Vucevic historically, which is strange. That's not like it doesn't look like an awesome matchup on paper, but it has been. But I think that is where the Pacers can kind of keep up a little bit, is play through Sabonis again, keep that free-flowing style going, working, and use him as their fulcrum with size that the Bulls don't have.
Yeah, and I think, regardless of Vucevic's status, I think, you're going to want to, especially with the, run through Sabonis a lot, but also, like, I think you would want to limit Karis LeVert's on-ball reps in this game, just because he's notoriously a inconsistent decision maker, I would say. And the Bulls' perimeter defense will just, eat that up. Like, Brogdon is a much more steady decision maker, and has, better. He's stronger too, and so he can kind of, maybe keep Lonzo and Caruso at bay a little better. So that would be the other thing, is I think you want to run a ton of stuff through Sabonis and Brogdon, which is what you want to do every game for the Pacers, but especially in a game like this where the Bulls might be really, really able to take advantage of LeVert's inconsistent decision making and shooting. Maybe all those off balance leaners and runners that could that sometimes fall, sometimes don't, could fuel a lot of transition for the Bulls. So of course, yes, you want the ball to go through the basket and slow a team that's dynamic in transition like the Bulls, but you can also maybe make it easier on yourself if you don't run as much through LeVert, which I don't know. I've always been a little bit lower on LeVert's game, but I think in this specific matchup, you want to make him kind of a guy who's attacking off the catch and using his speed in that way.
Yeah, I was really high on LeVert going into this season, and so far, all my stock is getting drained. I am going broke on LeVert because, man, has he really struggled this season. Really struggled this season. Like, I did a lazy analysis plus minus earlier, but I've messaged a few people that I talked to about the Pacers a lot, being like, LeVert being this bad is like 60% of their problems right now. Like, if he was just shooting 50%, they would have won twice this week, more than they did. So he's been struggling, and I agree that could be important in this game. We talked about pace control and being reactionary. The Bulls are so dynamic in transition. Like, you don't want them to be running out on misses all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So do you want to be playing slow into their hands? Maybe that works like it did against the Kings. Maybe it doesn't, like it did all week. I don't know how they want to play it, but it's going to be interesting. And I don't know where they can get a huge advantage elsewhere. Alonzo has done well against Brogdon historically. Turner's played well against the Bulls, but that was against the Jim Boylan era. What the hell are they doing against screen coverage Bulls and not so much in the new era Bulls? And the Pacers bench hasn't been as good. Maybe TJ McConnell can be a guy that kind of gets them moving, although their perimeter defense is so good. I don't really know. So it kind of is, it's so single scoped, but maybe Sabonis really is the key in this game. Like if the Bulls can throw him off, it might be that easy that they just win if they do that.
Yeah, and I think Turner especially is a guy who this isn't a great matchup because where he is great is getting the taking those threes, or when the ball swings his way, he's got the up fake or just the rip and go. The Bulls aren't going to like give him those like crevices of space or whatever to get to the rim, because he's been so improved as a driver the last couple of years off the catch. But the Bulls are going to crowd his handle when he puts the ball on the deck. They're going to rotate at the rim, and obviously Turner is bigger, but he's not some like hulking center, right? So yeah, I think it's really going to cut. Like Sabonis is going to be really key, and that's ties back to what we talked about throughout this episode. Is like it means using him properly. Like there is a clear way. There's a clear advantage with your best player, or whatever you want to call Sabonis, key player, your all-star. But you have to use him in the proper way, like you did against the Pelicans, not like you did against the Hornets. So really curious to see how that plays out. But there, I agree that if Vooch doesn't play, then yeah, I would say this is a game that could be pretty fun and interesting, and a clear opportunity for the Pacers to win and win 2 in a row. But if Vooch plays, it makes it a little tougher. Regardless of Vooch's status, how Carlisle uses Sabonis is kind of what this game is going to hinge on if Vooch doesn't play, especially. So I guess that kind of was an oxymoron. I said regardless of Vooch's status, and then Sabonis, if Vooch doesn't play, the Bulls can win if they use Sabonis, or the Pacers can win if they use Sabonis properly. My goodness, that was a word salad. Anyhow, I will kick it back to you as the host. I was cratering.
Well, I've hit all the points I want to really talk about for this game. I have only caught the Bulls, I think, 3 or 4 times. You know what I hate sometimes is when really good teams are in the Pacers division because they play at the same time. Like I struggled to watch the Bucks a lot last year because they played at the same time as the Pacers. Are never on national TV. Thankfully, the Bulls are on national TV enough that I can get them a few times, but it's sometimes frustrating when these teams are. Evan Mobley, I've had a ton of trouble getting Evan Mobley time because they play at the same time as the Pacers for like 90% of their games. It's very annoying. I'm very behind on the Bulls, so I'm glad that you were here to help me walk through my limited Chicago knowledge. Jackson, where can people follow you and all your stuff that I'll let you decide what you should and should not share of your numerous outlets?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at JackFrank_JJF. Everywhere I write and podcast about the NBA is included in my bio. But specifically, if you're not on Twitter and you still want to find my work, I write for Basketball News, Dime Up Rocks, The Analyst, and Liberty Ballers. And I also do podcasting once or twice a week with Liberty Ballers. So all of my work is at those spots. And then and I'm always on Twitter posting clips and saying obnoxious things. But you can find all my non-obnoxious things. Maybe you find my work obnoxious, but you can find it at those places I listed.
An NBA must follow. Jackson and I have been on Twitter together for like 4 years now. My God.
My goodness.
How long I consider. Twitter friendships are a weird thing. But yeah, we go back quite a bit. Highly recommended from me. Of course, this podcast is on Twitter at Locked On Pacers and me at TEastNBA. Tomorrow, we'll be breaking down Pacers Bowl, see if the Pacers could find a way to beat one of the East's looking like elite teams. Should be pretty fun. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you tomorrow.